Dan Illman, Mike Beer, taking a look at a major Kentucky Derby prep to be contested at the fairgrounds on Saturday. Race number 13 is at a mile and an eighth, and it's the Grade 2 Risen Star. $400,000 is the purse, and as you see, we have a very big field, including three from the Brad Cox Armada. He just seems to be loaded with three-year-olds this year, and the undefeated number 13 Victory Formation is going to show speed again.
Yeah, I mean, Cox has some really nice three-year-olds, certainly Victory Formation so far, Dan. He's made no mistakes. He's improved with every start, comes into this off of a very easy front-running win down at Oaklawn Park and Stakes Company. This is a tougher race than that one.
It is a longer distance, and it is a tougher pace setup, as we see from our Timeform US pace projector. They do project Victory Formation to get to the lead, but notice that red bar on the bottom left of the pace projector. It indicates a fast pace that could work against horses like Victory Formation and Harlow Cap, another horse that has shown speed out of town and moves from Bob Baffert to Steve Asmussen.
Yeah, I do think that there's plenty of pace in this race. We'll see how aggressive, I guess, they elect to get with Victory Formation. Dan, drawn to the far outside. Are they going to be intent on coming out of their running and trying to make the lead, or will they try to teach this horse some lessons?
A horse that is hoping for a pace meltdown is not even on your pace projector from a chiclet standpoint. The Deep Closer, the number one, Quiet as Midnight, who's taking a big step up in class. We'll watch his most recent effort, a runner-up performance in a 2-life allowance at Delta Downs, going a 2-turn 7 furlongs over a sloppy track. Boy, Mike, it looks like he has every chance in this race. He can't get by the gate-to-wire winner.
He improves a little bit in this race, but has no excuse not to get the job done. And obviously, he needs to run way better than that against this field.
His lone win came in a $20,000 maiden claimer. He looks like a horse from a physical standpoint that might want this extra distance. The 2 is Single Ruler, and this horse scored first-time blinkers last time out for trainer Keith DeZormo in a 2-turn maiden special weight at the fairgrounds. Thought he took advantage of a good pace scenario that day, Mike. Might get another good one here.
I agree with you. The trip worked out for him. I still thought he ran a pretty nice race that day, Dan. Another horse that took a step in the right direction last time. He goes out for a really good trainer, too. A horse who doesn't step his horses up lightly, I don't think. So they're going to give him a shot in here. It's a really tough race. He could have some pace to run into, and he could improve again.
Keith DeZormo trained horses usually improve with more experience. I thought this horse ran a sneaky good race. 2 starts back from post position 12, trying to mid-move into it from the outside. Shaq Diesel is the number 3. This horse is already a 3-time winner, but he's 0 for 2 against stakes foes. Here's his first ever 2-turn appearance, a starter optional claimer at Tampa Bay in late January, and he just got up close to a glacial pace. They went 49-2 for the half and almost 114 for 3/4, but Shaq Diesel's going to grind it out.
Yeah, he does stay on here to the end. Finally overtakes the leaders, and he is going to hold on at the end of this race. Not a bad performance, Dan. Not one that's going to get too many people interested in him in this race. I don't think it's a huge step up in class for him, but at least he ran, pretty well last time and showed that he can get a little bit of a distance.
Determinedly, the number 4 goes out for trainer Mark Cassian. He was the beaten odds-on favorite in the first little stepping stone on the Louisiana road to the Triple Crown, the Gunrunner Stakes. Now, he bounced out of that effort and beat a couple of these rivals last time out, although of the 3 horses exiting that second-level optional claimer, Determinedly by far had the easiest trip, just walking the dog on the lead.
Yeah, he got a really good ride last time. They just put him on the front right from the start of that race. He was able to rate it for a good half mile before he had to pick up the pace a little bit. And he had, enough left to hold on through the stretch. Like you, I'm not necessarily sure he ran the best race last time, but he did run well again. I do think he has some talent, Dan. I wonder if he keeps getting better as the distances get longer. I'm really concerned that he doesn't really want to go this far.
The number 5, Harlow Cap, is by Triple Crown winner Justify. He was trained for his first 3 starts in Southern California by Bob Baffert, including this race, at a mile and a 16th, a maiden special, where Harlow Cap got to the lead in here, seemed a little bit green on the second turn, but really had no issues beating a solid enough field. The third-place finisher would come back to finish second in a maiden special with a very respectable 89 Beyer speed figure. This pace is likely to get hot, and we'll see if he could deal with the step up in class, the step up in distance, and maybe a faster pace.
Yeah, I mean, all those things are working against him here, Dan. I won't be surprised when he turns out to be pretty good. I actually like all three of his races in Southern California. Now, obviously, maybe he's going to have to try to find a way to do it differently here, where they can't just send him off to the front and see what happens. But I liked his win last time. He ran way better than it looks two back with trouble into the first turn in that race. And even his debut was pretty good. I don't know. I like this horse. I wonder if this is the right spot to bet him.
Brad Cox has the 6 Angel of Empire in this race, and I think he might sort of slip under the radar from a wagering standpoint. He was second last time out to stablemate Victory Formation, but as we mentioned, Victory Formation just had all the best of it that day, setting the pace and sprinting on home with the short stretch at Oaklawn. Here, Angel of Empire gets a little bit more ground and a lot more pace.
Yeah, those things are all true, Dan. I do think that makes the source interesting, especially when you go back and look at the Smarty Jones, where they just took a hold of this horse from the start to get him back off the pace as Victory Formation got loose. Maybe you should have been able to see that coming, since Cox trains both of these horses, but it certainly worked against Angel of Empire last time, and things are supposed to be totally different here.
Sun Thunder, the number 7, is one of the few horses in this race that is arguably getting a little bit of class relief, because he was in against the exceptionally talented Arabian Knight, who's just on everyone's top 5 Kentucky Derby list right now. That was the Southwest, and Sun Thunder ran 4th in only his 3rd lifetime start. He ran well sprinting when beaten by Determinedly. And this is another horse with the right running style, Mike. I think it just looks like he's progressing with each and every start.
I do too. The bigger the price that he is in here, the more that I'll want to use him, Dan. I don't think he's done really anything wrong. Any of his 3 starts so far. You mentioned the sprint debut. They just let him get outrun early in that race, and he made up a little bit of ground through the stretch. I really liked his maiden when they stretched him out 2 back, and he just really had no chance last time against Arabian Knight. I didn't think he ran horribly, although he just really couldn't get himself into contention with that winner, just running away from the field.
Tapit's Conquest, the number 8, was cross-entered in both the Lecomte and that second-level allowance that Determinedly won at the fairgrounds. They opted to go for the somewhat easier spot. Of course, Cox won the Lecomte with instant coffee. Tapit's Conquest just didn't get the right setup in that race. Determinedly got loosed. Tapit's Conquest was last behind a slow pace, and then had to squeeze on through a narrow opening along the inside. For his first start off the layoff, it was a fine performance.
Yeah, I think it's not that difficult to go back and watch that race and decide that Tapit's Conquest was best in there and was just unlucky not to win. They elected not to go for position early and sit last. And then I just think Giroux made a huge mistake around that final turn to not get this horse to the outside. I don't know why he thought it was a good idea to stay in, but this horse wound up on the rail behind the winner and only got to squeeze through late, still almost won the race. I know he only got a 72 buyer break in his maiden, Dan. I thought he was super that day.
Tom Amos sends out the number 9 Curly Jack, and despite the fact that this horse is already a graded stakes winner, he seems a little bit underrated. He was second last time out in the Grade 2 Kentucky Jockey Club behind Instant Coffee, who of course came back to win the Lecomte at the fairgrounds with a 92 buyer speed figure. He's well connected. He has a good pedigree. His dam was second in the Mother Goose. This will be an interesting spot. 9 furlongs in his first start of the year.
Yeah, true. I mean, he does have to get a distance here right off the layoff, but this horse was actually a little bit of an overachiever last year, I think. Listen, we talked about that Iroquois a lot. I didn't love that race overall, but I won't knock his performance in winning it. He didn't do anything wrong there and got the job done. He didn't get a very good trip in the Kentucky Jockey Club the last time we saw him there. I mean, I don't think it's fair to say he was going to win, but man, did he spend a lot of time buried behind horses in the stretch.
And similarly, the number 10 Two Phils is also a graded stakes winner at Churchill Downs as a 2-year-old. And he also just doesn't seem to get a lot of respect. Now, he at least has a prep run already this year for trainer Larry Ravelli, where he finished second in the Lecomte. He made a menacing move on the turn to get into contention. He was a little bit late to change leads. Once he did, he had a brief advantage, but then favored Instant Coffee and hailed him.
Yeah, he didn't have an excuse last time, but I still thought that he ran pretty well, and it showed at least, and that the wet track that he won that Street Sense on isn't required for him to come up with a big performance. He was really good winning the street sense, but he ran very well last time also. He just wasn't quite as good as Instant Coffee.
Curious to see how far the number 11 Silver Heist wants to go, Mike. He is by Tapit. There is some strong middle distance influences in his female family. He won his debut coming from off the pace sprinting. And then last time out in that determinedly race, he sat all in all a pretty good trip. He was in the pocket for his first time around 2 turns. He went after determinedly on the outside, turning into the stretch, and he just sort of lacked a little bit of focus and a little bit of finish. But it was only his second lifetime start. I think he could still project real improvement for this Asmussen trainee.
I'll agree with all that stuff, Dan. I didn't feel like he had, some kind of excuse last time, but there was plenty working against him there. And it was a good performance. He did sit a good trip. He wasn't quite good enough to get the job done there, but it was a step in the right direction. I'm concerned that he's another one that more distance might not really help this horse, but he's so lightly raced and he does have a nice pedigree.
The number 12 is Croupi, and trainer Todd Pletcher is showing a lot of confidence in running Croupi, a maiden after 5 starts in this salty graded stakes race. Let's watch his most recent effort. This is his seasonal debut, going a 1-turn mile at Aqueduct. Croupi's on the outside here, and the horse that beats him by a very narrow margin, Slip Mahoney, looks like he's okay. I think Slip Mahoney was coming into this race off a narrow loss to Tapit Triche, a horse that looks like he's got a lot of ability.
Yeah, he does. He bumps into a good horse here. And Croupi actually runs pretty well in here, Dan. He just lacked any speed at all in the first part of that race and got really far back in that field. And he made a long run just to get himself up to the outside of Slip Mahoney there. He couldn't quite get by him at the end. I still thought he ran a really good race in that spot. Going to the race 2 back, his final start as a 2-year-old, that's when Pletcher finally got him stretched out. It feels like that's what this horse wants to do. He basically had an impossible trip in that race. I know that he's still a maiden. He should have won 2 back. He ran fine last time. This horse, to me, is a major player in this race.
There's always been a lot of hype surrounding this horse, Croupi, and as you mentioned, the extra distance is really going to help him out. He just acts like he's going to run all day, and he's still learning the game. Maybe Saturday, the light bulb completely goes on. Victory Formation is the 13, and he's 3 for 3 in his career for Brad Cox, and he won the Smarty Jones on New Year's Day in front-running fashion at Oaklawn. He was just simply too quick for these horses. He cleared from his far outside post in the blink of an eye, and in the short stretch, they're not going to get him. Angel of Empire tries hard for second. Now this is the acid test from a pace and distance standpoint.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he's run well in all 3 of his starts. He wins that Smarty Jones very easily, but he did it with a really soft trip, and now he's got to go longer from an outside post with speed to his inside, and this is just a way tougher field. These are all things that work against Victory Formation, and he's a horse who could take a lot of money in here. So those are all the questions you have to ask yourself. What kind of price do you want to take on him with all those extra obstacles in his way? Maybe he is this good, Dan. I personally wanted somebody else in here if Victory Formation winds up being the favorite.
Completing the field is the number 14 Private Creed, who was a multiple stakes winner sprinting on the turf at 2 and earned a stakes placing going a mile on the turf in his seasonal debut. He's going to make a completely different switch. He's going to try dirt for the first time, and he's going to have to do it off from a very difficult outside post position. The Dam was a stakes winning router in an off the turf race on dirt.
Yeah, I mean, I like him. I think he's shown some real ability on turf. I think, Dan, he's just not my kind of horse, especially in a race like this one, throw in the outside post. Those are all things that just make it really tough for me to get behind him.
Let's take a look at our top selections for this week's Kentucky Derby prep. It's at the fairgrounds. We're going to try to look for some prices. The also-rans from the determinedly race. Tapit's Conquest is a horse, Mike, I know you've always been high on. You wanted to give him a chance in the Lecomte. They went for the allowance instead, and that might actually help your price here because he can be dirtied up somewhat despite not having the greatest trip or setup.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they bet this race. I really don't know who's going to be the favorite. I certainly can see Tapit's Conquest taking some money in here, Dan, but I don't think he should be the favorite. I thought he ran fine last time. Really liked his maiden win when they stretched him out. I think there's a lot of talent here.
We both have a lot of respect for the number 5 Harlow Cap. We both picked him second. I'm hoping Silver Heist can take a decisive move forward in only his third lifetime start, but he's got to be a price between 8 and 12 to 1 for me to consider, considering he is so lightly raced and this distance is a question. 8-5, 12-7 for Mike, 11-5, 13-4 for me in the Risen Star. Good luck.